What's up, guys? Welcome to another studio episode. I just got back from my fall colors workshops the other day, and they went really well, and they are coincidentally the reason why I didn't get this video done sooner. And this is definitely the most requested video, so let's jump right into it. Everybody's asking me, how do I photograph the annular eclipse? So obviously there's a lot of stuff on the interwebs that you can find for research for how to do this, but I'm going to give you my 2 cents, having shot a few of them myself. It should be noted that this isn't going to be a planning episode because there's like 3 days until the eclipse. So hopefully you already have your plans narrowed down, or at least have an idea of where you're going to go. I will touch on that a little bit for future episodes because this won't be the last eclipse that you see in your life. Hopefully they do happen kind of regularly thanks to physics. So just a real quick lesson on eclipse and physics. What is an eclipse? There's obviously solar eclipses and lunar eclipses. This is a solar eclipse. And then within solar eclipses, there are total eclipses and annular eclipses, or partial eclipses. This is the latter, and it is an annular eclipse, which means that the sun's diameter, the apparent diameter in relation to what we see on Earth, is a little bit smaller than the diameter of the sun, which means we're going to get a ring around the moon from the sun, which is called the Ring of Fire. So this is not the same as a total eclipse. So if you're waiting for a total eclipse, or if you're hoping for a total eclipse, this won't be it. That will be next year. However, the annular eclipses are still pretty cool to see, and you can do a lot with them. But that will change slightly how you might approach shooting that from a technical standpoint, like with settings and stuff. So let's go over a few basic things about the eclipse and how you might shoot it. All right, so we're going to start with the easiest method, which is getting the longest lens possible and getting straight up on the eclipse, just right in its face with as much focal length as possible. This is also going to mean that the rest of the image, there will be nothing else in the image. It will just be a black image with a silhouette of the moon and the sun properly exposed. So this will get you your Ring of Fire. And this is the last shot that I ever took of one, which is in 2012, I think. It was a long time ago, and I definitely didn't have as good of equipment as I do now. I think the longest focal length range that I had was I had a 300 f4 with a 1.4 teleconverter on it, and then I also had a 70 to 200 f4, and I definitely did do a great job back then. But I'd like to think that in the last 11 years I've come a long way. So don't be hating on my old images. I think I probably will do a Ring of Fire this shot just to see if I can, nail down the timing a little bit better. I was trying to do too many things at once, which is why I don't have a complete full Ring of Fire shot from back then. So let's talk about something, the most important thing. Obviously, hopefully it's obvious. If it's not, then just take this to heart, take this in consideration. If you're going to do this type of stuff and photograph the sun, it would be highly behooving of you to get a solar filter. This is not an ND filter. An ND filter can help in certain situations. Basically, an ND filter will allow you to photograph it without shooting at something like f/22 and 1/8000th of a second, which is usually just not great. Diffraction is like one of the biggest causes of image softness for sure. And so I definitely don't want to be stopping my aperture all the way down to f/22, f/32, whatever. If you have a long telephoto or zoom lens, they actually usually go past f/22. So that's what an ND filter is going to help you with. It will not, however, protect your sensor from the UV rays of the sun, from the brightness of the sun. And that's what a solar filter will do. And so that looks like this. So I made this, and I made this back in 2011 or 2012. And basically it just has this guy, and I just made this cheap little cutout out of matte board, and it'll just fit right over my lens and sit there. And I made it for a slightly bigger lens, but whatever, it'll cover it. So this is a solar filter, and this is the solar film that you can buy. And like I said, this is not a planning episode because you likely won't be able to order this in time. So keep that in mind for future reference. Solar film, solar filters, very good to have. I just ordered the roll of film. It comes in a roll that you can cut and make your own diameter. I will be making one for this. I still haven't made it yet because life, but that's my 500 f4. But it's got a much larger diameter, so I've got to just cut that all out and make that. So the solar filters are going to be really good for helping you with the extreme tight shots. Basically, I would say like 400 or more millimeters, and you just want a really tight shot. Then the solar filters are going to definitely be the best way to do that. Now, they are going to make the sun white, so you're going to have to adjust in Photoshop, readjust the color in Photoshop, because they do filter out a lot of the spectrum, and it will come out white or grayish, you know, just devoid of color. So you're gonna have to add that color back in, which is not hard. So on a technical level, again, like I said, I don't like to shoot at f22 or really past f16 for this kind of stuff if I can help it. So personally, I'm gonna be shooting between f8, f11. Those are kind of sweet spots for a lot of lenses. And then just keep in mind, the more focal length you have, you know, 200, 300, 400, 500, all the way up to 800 and more, the longer the focal length, the shallower the depth of field, inherent depth of field is going to be, just because of the distance and the compression. So just keep that in mind. Even if you have like an 800 f11, which is going to be a great lens for this, a lot of people complain about the f11 and how it's not shallow enough and all that, but 800 f11 is actually going to be shallower than you might think, but it will be enough to get this done. So don't worry about that. If you haven't a 600 or 800 f11, the RF versions, and you can't change your aperture, that's okay. The f11 will work nicely in this case. And if you have a faster lens, like a 150 to 600 or 100 to 400, 100 to 500, whatever, stop it down to f8, f11. Those are going to be really great spots. And then whatever ISO 100, and then whatever shutter speed you're going to need to get the proper exposure. So in this case, shutter speed is what I care about the least, because I'm going to be on a solid tripod. Turn your image stabilization off. That's another big key that has the potential, if you're on a tripod, to increase or add in shake that wouldn't have been there before due to the motors. And then of course, make sure you have a sturdy tripod. More importantly, people just think about the legs of their tripod, you know, big beefy legs or whatever, and that's great. But keep in mind that this eclipse, from where I'm going to be in New Mexico and Albuquerque, the eclipse is going to, at like 10:30 a.m., it's going to be like 36 degrees into the sky from the horizon. That's a pretty steep angle. And so keep in mind that if you have a big, heavier lens like that, you know, you're going to be, or a 150 to 600 or something, those are all kind of heavy lenses. You're going to be keeping that at an angle, and then it's only going to increase. So keep that in mind. If you have a ball head or something, just make sure that it can handle that angle and that it doesn't slip out on you, that if you need to, you know, be there to catch it or something, or that kind of stuff is pretty important and often overlooked. So those are the settings I'm going to be using for the big lens with the tight. I'm going to have a 1.4 teleconverter on there. I'll probably also put my R5 in crop mode, which will put that thing to an 1120 millimeter f5.6, and I'll stop down to f8 or f11, and we'll see what I can do with that. For my backup lens, depending, if I can, I'll be honest, I haven't scouted a location for this yet. Which is stupid, I know, but I actually wasn't seriously considering shooting this. I was actually almost considering skipping this one, but I just felt like FOMO increasingly encroaching on me. So I am going to run up there last minute, and for my backup one, I'm going to be using this 70 to 200 f4. I'm going to try to do a wider landscape. I have a couple of places in mind, so let's talk about some planning real quick. If you have the ability to quickly plan, or plan even the day before, this will help you a lot. So let me grab my phone here. All right, so we're gonna go here. The first app that you can use is Photo Pills. This is great because this will give you an idea. You gotta turn this eclipse monitoring on up here in the left, and then it will give you the cool charts and everything. It will show you the blue is the moon, the sun is the yellow line, and it will show you based on where you put that pin, how it's going to line up from where you are. So this will be great because like if we come down here, so this is the area that I'm going to be in. I've got some volcanoes, stuff like that. I don't know exactly, I haven't tied it down yet. I've been out here many, many times, so I have a very good idea in my head, but I won't know for sure until I go check this out the day before. And I'm going to try to maybe line up one of these volcanoes with the 70 to 200, and I'll probably have it at 200. So something like this will help you a lot. It also has the AR, so I can switch in here and I can scroll to augmented reality. So we can see weird things going on. So if we look back here, now it will show you the point of totality, or it'll also show you just where it is in the sky. So you can see, now you can see that angle, and this will help you plan for if you have an object that's sticking up in the frame, that'll work with that, that's far away or close or whatever. If you have a city skyline or some mountains or something like that. And then you can also put in here, you can put in here the focal length. I don't know why. So there, that's if we do 230 millimeters. And then you'll be able to see kind of an apparent size, which will help you. So another one is this guy, Sun Surveyor. I use this a lot. So we can come in here and we can scroll over to Saturday, October 14th. I think it's going to be at like 10:34, something like that. You can dial in the exact time, but whatever, 10:30. Okay, so now if we come back around here, same deal. This shows all of the goods, and it shows the sun and the moon there, so it shows there will be an eclipse, and it shows the altitude. So if you hover over it, you'll be able to see it's going to be at 132 degrees, which is on the compass, and that's going to be southeast. And it's going to be about 36 degrees. So those are the main two apps that I use, and that's how I use them. PhotoPills does a lot, actually does a lot more than Sun Surveyor, but they're both super easy. I think PhotoPills cost money. I've had it for so long I don't remember, but I think Sun Surveyor is either, they have a free version and maybe the pro version is like a couple bucks. I don't remember, but it's definitely worth it if you're into any sort of sun, lunar, or astrophotography. They all do the Milky Way, the lunar eclipses, the moon, the sun, just all of that. It's really great for planning, and PhotoPills does so much more. It's just stupid. So I'm going to be using those apps once I get out there the day before, and I'm going to go scout out a couple of locations and take a couple of test shots the day before. I'm also going to go out there like hopefully around the same time, around 10:30, so I can see where the sun's at, what it's going to look like in my photo. And so this is where I want to give a little more info on the filters and how I'm going to be using mine, and put a massive disclaimer here. So I will probably not be using a solar filter for the wider shots, and that's because I'm willing to risk the wider shots, the faster shutter speed, and the sun not taking up as much of the sensor size, as much area on the sensor. I will probably be using an ND filter to help me get the right exposure that I want with the right f-stop and everything like that. But the wider you go, generally the safer it is to get away without a solar filter if your exposures are short enough and if you don't have too much, just time on the sun. So just massive disclaimer there. I'm not going to be responsible if you mess your camera up. So if you fry your sensor, don't come hating after I told you to use a filter or to use the proper solar filter because it can happen. A side note, if you have equipment insurance, now's a good time to just check up on that and make sure that maybe you would be covered if you damaged your sensor or something. So I have insurance on my equipment, and I've definitely double checked that. Just a good peace of mind to know, just in case anything happens, like not just you damage your filter, but if your camera falls over because of that weight issue, whatever, you know, insurance is good. So if you're going to do like a time lapse or something with a wider shot, which is really cool, and I've done these for the solar eclipses, just remember, and this is good time lapse advice anyways, but just remember to take things out of auto. So take your auto focusing off, make sure you manual focus to infinity or your subject or wherever you want to be. Make sure you take it out of auto ISO, make sure that you're in manual mode and everything's dialed in. If you're going to get the exposure for the daytime, for the morning time, and you're taking that time lapse and things are going on, then just know that it will get darker and the exposure will drop. And you don't really want to have exposure compensation kick in for that, because you want to see the eclipse, you want to see the effect the eclipse is having, which is it getting darker and then getting brighter. So I would say expose for your normal whatever the daytime ambient light is going to be where you're at, and then you'll get that drop in exposure. Now, how long the eclipse lasts for a time lapse is up to you based on your intervals. So if you're doing a longer interval, meaning if you're taking shots every 3, 5, 10 seconds or whatever, then you're going to have a shorter elapsed time for the eclipse. If you're taking shorter ones, like 1 to 2 second intervals where your camera takes a shot every 1 to 2 seconds, then the elapsed time of the actual eclipse will be longer in the time lapse. But that's going to take up a lot more images, and depending on the duration of how long you want that time lapse to last, it might not be feasible with your memory card or whatever, because the range of the whole eclipse is going to be like hours long, right? It's going to start at like, I think 9:11 a.m. New Mexico time, Mountain Standard Time, and it's going to go all the way to like 1 o'clock or something, 1:30 or something like that, for the time the moon starts breaking the sun's diameter to the time it exits the sun's diameter. So taking a shot every single second for that is going to be kind of unfeasible, because that would literally be like tens of thousands of images. It would be a nightmare to process. But if you're just focusing on like, a 5-10 minute window or whatever of it crossing the sun's diameter and the max annularity, the totality, then doing a time lapse for like 1 to 2 second intervals is probably going to be good, but there's still going to be a lot of images. Just keep that in mind. Keep your interval in mind if you're going to try to do a time lapse. Okay, a couple last things about planning and about objects. If you're going to try to have something either in front of or to the side of the image and get it in the frame, just keep in mind your focal planes, and that even though you might be at f11 or something like that, if you're focusing on your subject, which is here on Earth, and then you have the eclipse right behind it or next to it, the eclipse will probably still be a little bit blurry. So either you're going to have to be cool with that, or you're going to have to focus stack and take one shot on your subject focused and then one shot focused on the eclipse, and then blend those in post after the fact. But you likely won't be able to get both your subject and the eclipse completely in focus in one, just due to the distance and focal planes and optical physics. That's going to be more exaggerated with a longer focal length. So the longer focal length you have, the shallower depth of field that you're going to have on your subject, and so the more apparent that out of focus bits are going to be. And conversely, the wider you go, the more seemingly in focus, or the larger the depth of field is going to be. So if you're shooting at 50 mil, or if you're doing an even wider, really cool wide shot like this that I did before, then shooting at a narrower depth of field at a narrower aperture is going to be more apparently in focus. So the wider shots too, I would take the same approach. If you're most likely going to be on a tripod, so I would be concerned about my aperture and having my ISO at 100 or low, just low if whatever you need it to be. But I want to focus on shutter speed last, even with the wider shots. Since I'm going to be on a tripod, if you have to do a longer shutter speed, that's okay. So like with the full total eclipse, I was able to get a couple of shots when it was dark enough to get stars and have a couple of second long exposure and have the stars in there. So You likely won't get the same because it's an annular eclipse and we're still going to have that ring, so we're still going to have a little more brightness. But if you want to try to experiment with some longer shutter speeds, then you'll be able to do that. But for normal shots, I'm going to be focused more on having my aperture and my ISO where I want and not really caring about what my shutter speed is. All right, so hopefully that helps. If you have any other questions, leave those in the comments below. If you have tips, if you've done this more than I have, or you have some really good ideas for tips or shooting this kind of stuff, leave those in the comments below for everybody else too, because it's a big help to the community, and I really appreciate all of that in the comments. Helping everybody out is definitely the best thing that we can all do here. I'll be in the comments up until Friday, so I'll be kind of busy after that, obviously. But the most important thing is get out there and try. That's the beauty of this kind of stuff, is it will happen again. Obviously, it's not super common, but every couple of years, you've got a lot of options. You'll have fun no matter what. Just being out there and experiencing it is just amazing. It's really, really cool. I will vlog it probably. So what I'll do is I'm gonna vlog it. I won't do a live stream or anything like that because I want to focus on making the video and getting the shots, and then we'll come home in the vlog and I will do some editing, so that'll be after the fact. So if you go out there and you get some images, then be sure here in a couple weeks to check out my vlog about it, which will have how I set it up after the fact, of course, and then some editing stuff, and hopefully that'll give you a complete idea, tutorial, whatever, on how I'm doing things. You can also check out my older videos on the eclipse, on the past eclipses that I've done, both lunar and solar eclipse. I've got both shooting and editing videos of those. So get out there, have some fun. Hopefully you can see it. Hopefully the clouds are in your favor. They're definitely looking good for the Albuquerque area, so I'm stoked for that. I'll see you out there in the next one. Thanks for watching.